It is now my distinct honor to introduce today's graduation speaker. Along with the legal profession, politics may be one of the most challenging as well as rewarding vocations. Challenging because politicians, like lawyers, must navigate every fault line in our society. Rewarding because if political leaders are able to overcome those differences, they can, like lawyers, realize the most fundamental ideals of our society. That is why politics has been called America's binding secular religion. Today's speaker embodies the highest form of the political art. As district attorney, as mayor, as governor, as national party leader, he has redefined each level of government in which he served. Edward Rendell grew up in New York City, but lucky for us in the state of Pennsylvania, he was drawn to Philadelphia to attend college at the University of Pennsylvania. Since graduating from college and law school, more about which law school a little bit later, he spent essentially his entire life in Pennsylvania public service. His first stop was in the district attorney's office, where he became the youngest district attorney in Philadelphia history. He was highly successful in that role, but made an indelible national mark when he later became mayor of Philadelphia. Looking at the city today, it's harder to remember the dismal situation it faced at that moment. Philadelphia had a $250 million deficit and was on the verge of bankruptcy. It had lost faith in itself and its future. Our speaker had a dynamic plan for economic development, a new convention center, a vibrant avenue of the arts, which we're now on, an expanded international airport. The list goes on and on. But more importantly, he had a vision which brought a divided electorate together. Through a blend of hands-on leadership, a take-charge attitude, and sheer force of will, all Rendell trademarks, he balanced the budget and generated consecutive budget surpluses during his 8 years in office. The New York Times described the Rendell-led Renaissance in Philadelphia, quote, the most stunning turnaround in modern urban history. And Al Gore, who later named him DNC chair, dubbed him America's mayor. But almost as significant and as substantive policy achievement was his effect on the psyche of the public. In the best-selling book, A Prayer for the City, his tenure in Philadelphia and general approach to life was summed up as follows, and I quote, Rendell's optimism was more than just a trait of personality. It changed the entire feel of the city to the point where the perpetual focus wasn't on the litany of problems, but on what maybe, just maybe, could be done. That's the very definition of leadership. His success and popularity as mayor, as well as mayoralty term limits, propelled him on to the next level, the Pennsylvania governorship. His election was a remarkable political achievement for a big city mayor in largely rural Pennsylvania. As governor, he faced an equally difficult environment. Despite the challenges, his achievements over the past 8 years in Pennsylvania have been exceptional. An unprecedented expansion in support for early public education, numerous environmental initiatives in clean energy and wind power, and streamlined administrative efficiencies which ensure an expanded economic environment for all citizens. In addition to his pursuit of the public service, our speaker has one other well-known passion, his legendary and ubiquitous enthusiasm for sports. He adores, simply adores, the Phillies, the Sixers, the Eagles, and last but not least, the Penn Quakers. My apologies to all you Yankees fans in the room. For the past few years, he was the only governor in the country doing commentary on cable news network. While term limits prevented him from continuing as governor, there are two other provisions for which pundits have described him as perfectly suited: commissioner of baseball or the NFL. The only problem, if he took either of those positions, he couldn't root for the Philly teams. So does our speaker have any weaknesses from my perspective? Only one. We cannot claim him as a graduate of Penn Law School. An unfortunate fact he has pointed out to me on more than one occasion. Sadly, he is an historic example of the idiosyncrasies of the Penn Law admissions process. As an undergraduate at Penn, he is rumored to have had the highest or second highest LSAT in the school and a 4.0 GPA. though as the governor has noted publicly before, the grades came not from the register, but from Smoky Joe's Bar and Restaurant. That is why we are all so honored that Penn awarded him an honorary Doctor of Law several years ago. So now the law school, like every Pennsylvania, can now claim him as one of our own. It thus is my privilege to introduce one of America's great public servants and sports fan, as well as one of the best examples of the folly of term limits, the Honorable Ed Rendell.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I have to admit, when I first got the invitation to speak here today, I was somewhat querulous about why me. During the last 20 years as mayor and as governor, I've had the ability to make decisions involving the university that were worth tens of millions of dollars each and every year. And not surprisingly, I was invited to speak often during those 20 years and received several honorary degrees during those 20 years. But you will note from the dean's introduction that I'm the former district attorney, the former mayor, the former Democratic Party chairman, the former governor now for 3 months. I used to kid when I became mayor that I lost my first name. Nobody referred to me as Ed. It was Mayor Rendell, and then it was Chairman Rendell, and then it was Governor Rendell. So I thought when I ceased being governor that I would get my first name back. Alas, no, I'm the former. And I certainly didn't get invited here because I'm a graduate of Penn Law School. Penn, as the dean said, turned me down. In retrospect, it was a correct decision because we had 220 undergrads who applied to Penn that year. And the truth is, I was second in terms of my LSAT, second highest of the 220, but I ranked 201st out of 220 in marks. So it was a wise and profound decision. So I couldn't figure out why, but then it struck me. Because I and graduating class, the JD class, have something in common. This year, we will be new to the practice of law. Although I was a lawyer for many years and a very proud lawyer, as you will hear in a second. When I became mayor in 1991, 20 years ago, I ceased practicing law. There were times as mayor and as governor that I wanted to argue a case for the city or the state before the Supreme Court, but the city solicitor, or in that matter, my general counsel, always talked me out of it. So there were two things that I had to learn anew. One is how to drive. For 20 years, I haven't driven a car. And the second was how to practice law. I am 3 months into the practice of law, and a lot has changed, but the same principles apply. And from the time I graduated from law school in 1968 to present, I've always been abundantly proud to be a lawyer. Notwithstanding the fact that lawyers necessarily are not extraordinarily popular, and often are whipping boys and whipping girls for politicians, and the public holds them in fairly low esteem. Several years ago, the Inquirer had a big Sunday story. Their lead story was "The Public Ranks the Professions." So I quickly went through the story to find out where we lawyers rank. We ranked second from the bottom. But not to be deterred, I figured, let's find out who's dead last, because maybe it's doctors and we can get some enjoyment from that. Alas, it was politicians. But I am enormously proud to be a lawyer because I think lawyers protect people, defend people, and bring justice to the world. And nothing is more important to life than justice and fairness. And that, in the last analysis, is what we lawyers do. You know, in Henry VI, Shakespeare had Dick the Butcher offer the famous words, "The first thing we'll do is let's kill all the lawyers." And that is normally construed as to be an anti-lawyer sentiment. But in typical lawyer's fashion, it is now debated in the blogosphere between lawyers whether that was a good statement, meaning Dick the Butcher was a contract killer, and he and Jack Cade were planning to take over and do dastardly things. So of course they had to kill all the lawyers because lawyers protect people and lawyers are the best way to ensure freedom. Or was it just another continuation of Shakespeare's aversion to lawyers that he expressed in other shows and other plays? Who knows? But if you wanted to take a free society and rip it asunder and take away the things and the freedoms and the liberty that we hold dear, you would need to kill all the lawyers. Alexis de Tocqueville, when he toured America in 1853 and assessed our young burgeoning democracy, de Tocqueville said, "I cannot believe that a republic could subsist and not exist at the present time if the influence of lawyers in public business did not increase in proportion to the power of the people." And de Tocqueville got it right. And we lawyers have a proud history. 25 of the 56 signers of the Declaration were lawyers. 13 of our first 16 presidents who helped shape this nation were lawyers. And even if you look at the category of lawyers that seem to be held in most disdain by politicians, and that's trial lawyers today. Trial lawyers are guilty of some clear misdeeds. But think about in the 20th century, think about the 100 most important safety advances that protect all of us. Did they come from legislation? Not many, less than 20%. 80% of the most important safety advances of the last century came from litigation, were forced by litigation. Companies or individuals were forced to change their ways because of litigation. So to the class of 2011, be proud of the profession you're about to enter. And today I'd like to close by giving you a few quick pieces of advice that I have found to be important all throughout the careers you're going to have and the lives you're going to shape. First and foremost is number one, seize the moment. You won't know for another 20 years or so, you won't be able to understand the pride and the relief that your parents are feeling in this moment. Seize the moment. This would be an opportune time to ask them for money. Second, you decide. And by you decide, I mean something very simple. In America today, we have a tendency, our society, to define success by number one, the accumulation of material wealth, or number two, the accumulation of fame and celebrity. They are false icons. You have to decide what your criteria for success is, and then go out and try to reach those goals. And it's not material wealth, and it's not celebrity or fame. During my 20 years as mayor and governor and chairman of the Democratic Party, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the richest people in our country and some of the most famous. And I can report to you that many of them are desperately unhappy. And you decide who's more successful. Someone who teaches constitutional law at a little Iowa law school and coaches Little League soccer, and who with her husband runs a little ice cream shop during the summer, who has 5 kids and a devoted husband, all of whom love him very, very much. Or that lawyer who becomes chairman of the board of a big corporation and makes tens of millions of dollars by buying companies, closing them down, laying off people, stripping the companies of everything they're worth, and reselling them. Who's been divorced and married 4 times, and whose children won't talk to him. Who's more successful? You understand the answer. So you decide what your criteria for success are going to be. Don't let anybody else do it. Number 3 is go for it. Go for it. If you have a dream, and it seems fairly hard to attain, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Gosh, in this world, you're going to find people are always telling us what we can't do. You can't do that. You're not smart enough. You can't do that. There's no way that type of business can succeed. people are always telling us what we can't do. As Dean Fitz alluded in his introduction, I was told that there's no way that a big city mayor, particularly the mayor of Philadelphia, could get elected governor of Pennsylvania. No one had in 100 years. But it was a dream I had. I wanted to accumulate the resources to do the type of things that I wanted to achieve. And I went for it. But just because I succeeded in this one instance, it doesn't mean I haven't failed before. And everyone fails, with the possible exception of Dean Fitz. Everyone in this room has failed at something. No doubt about it. Barack Obama got shelled in his first run for the Congress. Abraham Lincoln lost his first 7 elections. Everyone fails. There's no disgrace in failing. The disgrace is if you have a dream and a goal and you don't try. Or that you put it off and say, well, I'll get to that later. Well, later turns out to be 30, 35, 40 years. And it's too late. You never get that time back. So go for it. Reach for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll fall in the stars. My next piece of advice is hang in there. And by the way, Megan, your speaker for the class of 2011, is a perfect example of having a dream and going for it. And a perfect example of the fourth piece of advice I'm giving you. Hang in there. Success is not instantaneous. Maybe in the 90s it seemed like it was, but it isn't. It isn't. You have to work for it. I don't care how brilliant you are, how well you speak. When you're preparing a case, preparation will determine whether you win or lose, not your eloquence. Dig in there. Do whatever it takes. For those of you who are going to a big law firm, you're going to hate the first year. You might hate the second year. Hang in there and be persistent, and all of a sudden you'll start doing important things, and you'll start doing great things, and you'll start being excited about what you do. My dad died when I was 14. People always say how sad it was. But I always feel that I was lucky enough to have 14 years on this earth with him, and he gave me countless pieces of good advice. And the one he gave me that almost stands out most of all was he said, whatever you do, do it well. If they hand you a broom and tell you to sweep the floor, be the best broom sweeper that ever had, and you won't be doing it very long. So if someone tells you that you've got to do due diligence on a company, and due diligence means reading 1,400 pages over the weekend, read them. So hang in there. And the last thing I want to tell you about is how to feel good about what you do. And I told you that I was very proud to be a lawyer, and I'm particularly proud to be a Philadelphia lawyer, because here in the Philadelphia Bar Association, we do wonderful things. In my judgment, most Philadelphia lawyers do well, but we also do good. Consider the following, that the Philadelphia Bar Association, through its pro bono programs, have 3,000 volunteer lawyers a year who volunteer time and take on 50,000 cases a year. We take them on all measure of cases, in custody cases, support cases, domestic abuse cases, and Social Security disability cases. And in fact, while I was mayor, the SSI disability program, a lawyer for each child it was called, ALEC, was having trouble getting recruits. So the ALEC folks came to me and said, Mayor, would you take a case? And we hope that by you taking the case, it will get publicity and it will attract more volunteers to the program. So actually, when I told you I haven't practiced law in 20 years, it was incorrect. I did take the case. And I came to represent a 12-year-old girl by the name of Brittany, who had MS, but somehow, unbelievably, was turned down by a Social Security administrator for SSI disability. Now, the Bar Association was pretty smart. If they were going to give the mayor a case to try and hope to attract other lawyers to do it, it was a case that couldn't be lost. And as soon as I read it, I knew that it was a slam dunk. But folks, let me tell you, I prepared the weekend before. It was a Monday afternoon. I had met Brittany the previous week, and just meeting Brittany and seeing the challenges she faces, just walking into school. and she needed a wheelchair, and the only way she was going to get the wheelchair was if she was granted SSI disability. I wanted to win that case so much, and even though I knew intellectually it was a slam dunk, emotionally, I was a wreck. I was a wreck. I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to screw this up? Fortunately, we went to court, and we carried the day, and Brittany got a wheelchair. To this day, Brittany drives me nuts, and she's doing great. So, despite all this great work, and my own law firm, Ballard Spar, and I'm very proud of them, we do 26,000 hours across the country of pro bono work, which would be valued at just an average billing rate, valued at $8 million of legal time that we give. But despite all the efforts, there's still 80% of the people who go into Philadelphia family court unrepresented because they're too poor and they don't know better. And most of those decisions made by SSI administrators, bureaucrats, they never appeal because folks don't know they have the right to appeal, or they certainly don't think they could ever get a lawyer to help them. So there's a crying need for us to do more, and that's not just in Philadelphia, it's in every big city, in every rural hamlet, anywhere in the United States, and probably true across the world. So, spend some of your time, regardless of what you do. If you're going into public service, that's great. But if you're not, find time to help. And we're blessed because we can help in a way that ordinary citizens can't. We can represent people. And when we represent people, poor people, it's an amazing feeling because they've never had anybody speak for them before. They may be 68 years of age or 75, and no one's ever stood up and spoke for them. And when you stand up and speak for them, it's an amazing feeling. I've spent the 43 years that I've been out of law school, as the dean said, almost exclusively in public service. And I've never made anything close to what our society would consider real money. I've never missed it for a minute. Because I had the privilege of waking up every morning and knowing that I could use my energy and my talent to try to make things better for people. Sometimes 12.5 million at a time, sometimes 1 at a time. So members of the class of 2011, you've been blessed with a great opportunity. The Lord gave you incredible intelligence and drive. Your parents have given you an awesome opportunity by sending you to this great institution. You're very lucky, blessed people. So go out and, yes, do well, but also do good.